So Marlu and I have been, when she's here, when she's not here, we tend to watch a lot of home improvement shows. How many of you watch home improvement shows? Some of you, yeah. Which ones do you watch? Any? Have you heard of the show Renovation Aloha? It's a good one. I would recommend that one. But Marlu and I like to watch Rock the Block. You heard of Rock the Block? So if you haven't, this is the format. They have teams of two, and the teams of two are given a house to renovate, right? And they're all on the same block, and it's a contest to see who can up the value, the appraisal value of their house. So there's like 5 or 6 episodes, and then so season 1, the house was like kind of empty, all just walls, just a shell, and it was sort of like $250,000, right? It's worth. So each team then has to think about the kitchen and the living room and the bathrooms and the pantry and the storage and the exterior and the yard, the garage, and the landscaping. And they have to think about, how can I add to the value of the house? And so they have to choose like the flooring and the finishes like tile or paint or the countertops and the furniture, to add color and texture and whatever they can think of to increase the value, right? So the winner of season 1 increased the appraisal value by double. So it's like at the end it was worth 500-something thousand as opposed to 200-something thousand. Now, during the whole TV show, so there's like 5 or 6 episodes, right? They're debating about what adds value. And some of the people say, well, the design will add value. And others will say, no, the functionality of the house will add value. And so it's a combination of both. Other ways to increase value is to increase square footage, right, in your house, or create patios, or create decks, or whatever outdoor amenities you can add. Add more bathrooms, add more bedrooms, or closet space. So as I was watching all these shows, I thought that's a good theme for us in the next couple of weeks. And I thought of it because in October and November, we traditionally talk about stewardship, but it went by so quickly that we didn't have time to talk about stewardship in October and November. So I told the leaders, okay, we're going to talk about it in January. Well, we are now at the last Sunday of January, so we're going into February. But I would like to invite you to think of these questions. 1, how can we add value to our facility? All right. 2, how can we add value to our family and to our fellowship? 3, how can we add value to our programs? And then 4, how can we add just overall value to Kilohana United Methodist Church? So in Matthew 25, Jesus is talking about the parable of the talents. And so the story, as was read and a little bit explained by Jackie, was one is given 5 talents, one is given 2, and one is given 1. Now, how much is a talent in the biblical days? Well, 1 talent is equal to 6,000 denarii, right? So 6,000 denarii is like 15 years of salary for a laborer, a day laborer. That's a lot of money, right? So the talents are distributed, and then the master leaves. Now, before the master leaves, the master doesn't give any instructions, right? to the servants. He doesn't say, well, you can live off of some and treat yourself once in a while or have a party. He doesn't say, well, spend some, take a vacation, but save some. He doesn't say, give to the poor or give to a cause. He doesn't even say, invest it or make some profits. There are no instructions. There are no expectations. He just disappears. He gives it out and he's gone. But then when he returns, he decides to grade each one of them. There is judgment, right? So to the one he gave 5 talents and to the one he gave 2 talents, they both doubled their talents. And it says that the master was pleased with them, was happy about it. And we get this from this passage, we also get that saying, well done, good and faithful servant. Because you have been faithful with a few things, I will make you ruler over many, and so enter into the joy of the Lord. But the person who got the 1 talent was afraid and buried it. He said, I was so scared because you worked so hard for your money that I don't want to lose it. And so the master said, you wicked and lazy servant, you should have invested it and you should have gotten some interest. So the master did have expectations. Didn't say it at the beginning, right? And the expectation was for the servant to add value. The person with 1 talent, then that talent was taken away and given to someone else. So the master's response is this: fear is not acceptable. It is not a viable answer. It is not an excuse, nor any other excuse for that matter. So when we're thinking about stewardship, right, as Jackie was saying, normally we think about money, right? So the expectation in stewardship is for everybody, as you're able, to give more money, right, to the next year. And in regards to money, we don't want it just sitting around with no interest, but we want to add value. We want to invest in something as time goes forward. And kind of that's part of the message. And there's an expectation to increase, whether increase our pledging, increase our offering as we're able. But then I thought about the scripture in a different way, in an alternative way. And I thought about it in terms of transactional analysis. How many of you have heard of transactional analysis? Some of you have, okay. So this was really popular in the 1980s, and it was kind of popular. I remember in high school that one of our teachers was teaching this. Now, according to transactional analysis, we have 3 ego states. We have the adult ego state, we have the parent ego state, and we have the child ego state. Now, if you're in the adult ego mindset, the adult tends to be very logical, right? Very concerned about, I want the information, I want to get things done, I want to figure things out, I want to solve any challenge or problem that I might have. So the adult deals with situations and thinks of the responses to the situations. Right? The adult is looking for facts and solutions and just approaches objectively in the adult state. Now the parent ego state is where one is concerned about overseeing the welfare, well-being of children or others, right? So the parent has rules, the parent has expectations, the parent is conveying values. what is good and what is bad and what is right and what is wrong. And the parent is teaching the children and guiding them and protecting them and keeping them safe. The parents set the schedule, create structures at home, and the parent raises the child in religion. So the parent shows love and care and displays affection and provides for the needs. So the parent, furthermore, is a provider of food and shelter and health care and education, because a parent is concerned about growth for their child. Now, some parents might be quite unique in that some parents are also concerned about fun, all right? Usually we don't identify parents with the word fun, unless you're a special parent, right? You're lucky if your parents were concerned about you having fun. I don't think fun was part of my parents' vocabulary. How many of you, your parents were fun? Oh, more than I thought. Okay, that explains you. My parents were busy paying bills. My parents were busy raising kids. They were just barely able to put food on the table. And my mother then became a single parent, and life was not fun. It was a struggle. It was a burden. Furthermore, my parents were immigrants. When I see what is happening in our country to immigrants, especially parents of immigrants, how they are treated, shame on us. Shame on our government. If my mother and my dad lived in this time and were in Minnesota, they would be scared to death. And life would not be fun, but filled with fear. The third ego state is the child ego state. Now, there are two child ego states. There is adaptive child, and there is free child. Now, think about how you grew up. I was an adaptive child because I was kind of in the middle, right? So I was always adapting to the situation. I was always adjusting to the situation. So I was compliant, I was subservient, I was kind of passive, and I was trying to keep the peace with our siblings and trying to smooth things over all the time. So you might notice that about my personality. I was trying to be a calm presence in the midst of stress and conflict and just a stormy situation. The adaptive child tends to be agreeable and just go with the flow. Not make anybody angry, not add any more tension to all the tension that's already there. And the adaptive child worries what other people might think or say. And so the adaptive child is the middle of the road person. Now, we have some visitors from Texas, so I heard this one preacher from Texas says, do you know what is in the middle of the road in Texas? The only thing in the middle of the road is a dead armadillo. Have you heard that one? So that's one child state. But the other child state is the free child. Now, how many of you think or were raised or grew up as a kind of free child? Well, what do I mean by free child? So the free child is all about play. It's all about party. It's all about expressing yourself and sometimes being a little wild. I only saw one person raise their hand. I think there are more free childs in our church. But you hear the term, that person is a free spirit. that person is a live wire. Free child people are not too inhibited. They're willing to laugh and cry and dance and be spontaneous. And the free child doesn't think too much about all the responsibilities and all of that difficult stuff, because as the Nike logo says, just do it. Go for it. Banzai. Go for broke. Now, I'm not saying that a person is entirely one ego state, but sometimes a person has a dominant. So a person might be very nurturing or parental, or a person might be very logical, or a person might be kind of playful all the time. Now, in psychology, this is helpful because sometimes one person in the marriage is a free child and the other one is in the parent mode a lot of the times, right? Or the parent is trying to restrict or control or curb that free child in the other one. Or one is the adult and the other is trying to be expressive and spontaneous. And the adult might say, oh, don't be silly. The free child is saying, oh, don't be a party pooper. In the home renovation show, sometimes you have one person, they're paired up, right? So one can be very design-oriented, and the other one is more sort of concerned about the budgets. So one loves to be creative and choose nice materials and expensive designs and overspend, and then the partner is watching how to save and how to be fiscally conservative. Okay, so I say all this, and how does this relate to stewardship? Well, it might be helpful to think of how can I add value to the church and our facilities and our family, our programming, our outreach, our missions. And here's how I apply it. Okay. So if you tend to be more the adult ego state, you tend to be more thinking about budgets or what is practical and the expenses and the income, and you're more interested in the efficiency and the effectiveness and more task-oriented. So how do you add value then? Well, you're reasonable and you know what's attainable, so you may like being on a committee or on the administrative side of doing a project, and you have a goal and you create ways of how to get to the goal, and you're organized, you're strategic, and you're interested in the systems and the structures that we create. So in your talent, in your ego state, you can contribute in that way and add value. You might want to be on the Council of Finance and Administration. If you're in the parent mode most of the time, your thinking might be, wow, I'm interested in hospitality. I'm interested in the health and well-being of my neighbor or my friend. And so you're protective, you're caring, you're supporting, and you're feeling-oriented, and you're concerned about other people's happiness and their spiritual condition and their welfare. And if someone is sick, you want to help. And if someone is hurt, you want to comfort. If someone is down, you want to lift them up. And you tend to see offenses or injustices and you want to help. Because you protect and you want to preserve and you want to advocate for what is good and right. So if that's you, then maybe you should be on the Nurture Outreach Worship Committee. And you can add value there with your input and your ideas. Now, if you are a free child, you're more about being more creative, more spontaneous, more expressive, more artistic, right? Now, if you're an adaptive child, you tend to be more status quo. and you go with the flow and not make too much waves. Or you might be more interested in healing, right? Because if you're interested in being an adaptive child, you might be on the staff parish committee or the personnel committee because you want to support, you want to help and understand the staff and their issues. But the free child is someone who should take on new projects or parties or anniversaries or new ideas, new ways of doing things, and you want to have fun. How can we make our church more fun? And we want others to have fun. You're more about joy. You're more about celebration. And if you're in this mode, maybe you can organize special events, special dinners, or Aloha Hour. Why did Jesus tell this story? Well, he wanted people to add value. Now, he didn't say for what exactly, right? He just said, increase your investment to add value, but he didn't say what to use it for afterwards, other than this would please the master, this would please God, this would add value. The more we add value, the more we're able to offer. The more we add value, the more we're able to reach others and be of help and be of service. Adding value is not so that we can self-indulge, but to share more, to give more, to make more of a difference. So for the next few weeks, we're going to, in our stewardship discussion, we're going to talk more about this transactional analysis stuff to help us add value to our living, to our church, to our family, our fellowship, and how we can serve our community and reach out. In the meantime, we ponder, what ego state am I in most of the time? And how does it affect how I do things and the way I relate to others? So stay tuned for more. Amen? Amen.